From the kitchen of the cabin, it's the 5 Games for Doomsday review. Megacity Oceania. It should be a game. That's my primary thought when I open a box. It can be crammed with detailed plastic creatures or recessed player boards or monstrous statues that serve no discernible purpose. But when you strip all of that unnecessary flash away, it should be a game. This is the same for originality too. Originality is overrated. There are no bonus points for simple originality. In fact, originality is easy. I could create something before your very eyes that is highly original. Something that you had never seen before, but there would be one small problem. Something that would tickle away at your hindbrain. It's the fact that for all the originality in my hastily assembled creation, it would be shit. Originality is easy. Being good is hard. What we mean when we say we want something original is that we want something that is great, and preferably something we've never seen before. The never seen before is just the cherry. It's the great that we crave. I could defecate into a football, freeze it, and call it the spirit of the game. But what would any of us get out of it? Very little. Unless the Sarches want to pay me £1 million for it, then my trousers are already down. People still chase the original though, and mostly end up with a gimmick. Which is why it should be a game. You can't just whack a weird mechanic into a box. It has to be a game. Megacity Oceania by Michael Fox, Jordan Draper and Hub Games is something I've never seen before. It's great. And it's most certainly a game. In Megacity Oceania, players take on the roles of architects building a new megacity in the ocean off the coast of Australia. This is done by stacking pieces on various coloured hexes that represent different types of buildings. When it's not your turn, you frantically assemble your building, and when it is your turn, you can source building pieces, get new hexes to build on, and score contracts that are the impetus for your building. Points are scored by completing contracts, building monuments, and fulfilling architectural goals. When you've constructed your building, the whole table pauses to watch you slide it into place in the city. This is one of the tensest experiences I've had in gaming for ages, and also transforms the game into theatre. Firstly, this game is probably the most elegant implementation of real time that I've ever seen. The fact that you're building when it's not your turn is a real and tangible time constraint, but it feels generated by the players and not by the all-seeing eye of the stopwatch. This is a simply brilliant introduction of a real-time element into a game without electronic beeps or the drip-drip of sand. Also, the construction of the buildings is not simply stacking pieces on top of one another, but it's a challenge that results in many exaltations and frustrated sighs. The contract cards come with stipulations. This building must have an archway, this one a courtyard, it can't use certain materials. This changes the game from simple dexterity into an act of planning, into an act of architecture. It forces you to come up with a strategy. It creates a game. This game is not just a gimmick. There are real decisions here, but, unlike many other games, they dwell both in the intellectual and the spatial. They dwell in the choosing of the right contracts, and they dwell in the materials you use. Should I fire out tiny buildings, or should I labour over my magnum opus? Should I focus on just a couple of types of buildings, or diversify? There are decisions at every juncture, and they are seamlessly combined with the devilish dexterity elements of the game. Possibly the best decision made, though, is the decision to have the game stop when a player delivers a building to the city. This is where the game changes from a solitary fight against gravity to a truly communal experience. We play these games to create something together, and Megacity does this literally. The fingernail-biting joy of watching your friend agonisingly inch their architectural folly towards the growing city, and the resultant groans or cheers bring the table together. It is this brief pause in proceedings that reminds us why we're here in the first place, because a constant focus on strategy can make us forget that. Megacity reminds us why we play games with every excruciating millimetre. It should be a game. It shouldn't be a gimmick dressed up in games clothing. And with Megacity Oceania, Hub Games have not only delivered a game, but a true communal experience that elegantly reminds us what games are. Thank you for listening, and this review was made possible by the support of my patrons. You can become one too at patreon.com/5G4D.